Hello everyone and welcome to the next section of the course. In this section, we're going to take a look at strings in greater detail. So, as always, to set up our repository, we're going to create a new folder and then in there create an index.html file which is going to have a script connected to it in the body. And then in that script, we're going to run it, do a console log that says test just to make sure we're connected. And then we're going to open our index.html with live server. Then you can open a console and then all of our changes should be saved right there. Amazing. With that out of the way, we can now start with exploring strings in greater detail. We already talked about strings in the beginning of our course when we talked about data types. This video is just going to be an introduction to strings, a quick refresher of what we learned, just so we can have the foundations for all the string methods we're going to learn in the upcoming videos. So let's dive right in. In JavaScript and in any programming language for that matter, we need a way to store text. In JavaScript, we use strings to store text. String is nothing more than a primitive data type. So how can we create strings in JavaScript? Well, as we learned, there are three ways. Const single, and then in here we can say this is a string. Then we can do a double, so I'm gonna name the variable double, and then we can do this. This is using double quoted strings. By the way, I'm using Shift Option down to replicate a string on a new line. On Windows, that should be Shift Alt and then arrow down. Great. And then the third way is using something known as backticks, just like this. This is a string. So first of all, why do we have three different ways of writing strings? And second of all, why did I put a space in here between single and double quoted strings and backticks? Well, strings created with single and double quotes are the same. We can call them simple or basic strings. They simply represent some static textual value. Strings created with backticks, on the other hand, provide extended functionality. They are dynamic. They allow us to execute real JavaScript logic inside of them. Let me show you what I mean in an example. First of all, I'm gonna just console log all of the types of strings we have. So that's gonna be single, double, and then finally we'll do backticks, just so I can show you that they are all the same. As you can see, this is a string, and if I call a type of operator on them, you can see they're all indeed strings. So why are backticks different? We can delete all of these and then put the $ and curly braces syntax to in here execute something as real JavaScript logic. So for example, if I do 2 plus 2 and then if I remove these typeoffs, console log it, you can see now we get 4. What would happen if we try doing that in the first two types of the strings? So in here, $ curly braces 2 plus 2. You can immediately see just by the highlighting of our code that this is not gonna work. These strings have static values, static textual values, while in here we can execute real JavaScript code. Everything that we put in between the $ and curly braces is not simply taken for granted. It is evaluated as JavaScript logic. Therefore, 2 plus 2 returns 4 rather than the string of 2 plus 2. This means that we can also make function calls inside of backtick strings. For example, we can do a const sum, which is going to be an arrow function. And then in there, we can return, for example, a plus b, a and b being the parameters to our function. And then in here, we can create a string. Let's call it total. And then we can say the sum is, and then now we can use that $ curly braces syntax and make a function call and provide some parameters. So if we do this, and if I get rid of all the other code that we're not using right now, let's see what the total is going to be. As you can see, the sum is 4, but now if we change the parameter to 10, for example, we get the sum is 12, which means that we are in here executing real JavaScript logic. Backticks have one more extra feature. We can span them across multiple lines. This is really useful. For example, I can do something like this and then use enters to specify numbers 1, 2, and 3. Let's try renaming this to, for example, rows. And now let's see what is our console output. As you can see, we get 1, 2, 3. We have one space there, so this would be more appropriate. 1, 2, 3. What would happen if we try doing this with a normal string? Let's try it out. Const rows1 is equal to normal strings, and then 1, 2, 3. As you can see, it immediately jumps out of the syntax and you get invalid or unexpected token, which is the syntax error. You cannot do that. Now that we went through the introduction of the strings, let me ask you one question. How would the value of the following string look like? Const greeting is equal to hi, I'm John. Just like that. What do you think? You can already see by highlighting that something is not as it should be. So let's try console logging the greeting. And as you can see, we also get unexpected identifier because in here we broke our string and now we are not getting anything in here. JavaScript cannot understand what this is because it's definitely not a string. So this produces an error. In here, with a single quote after the I, we actually end the string and JavaScript doesn't know how to evaluate the rest of the code. One way to fix this would be to simply use different types of quotes. For example, in here we can use double quoted strings, and then the apostrophe in the middle is not going to affect the code at all. We're gonna get it. That works fine. But this is not the solution. Imagine if we had both types of strings in the sentence. For example, we can do hi, I'm John, and then we can say, but people call me, and then quote unquote, Johnny. Hi, I'm John, but people call me Johnny. As you can see now, again, this produces an error. To escape the character, you can use the slash. This means that this character is not going to be evaluated as logic after the strings are created, but it is going to be read just like a character, like any other character. So we need to add that sign in between every little quote that we have, and then that's gonna work. Hi, I'm Johnny, we have the apostrophe there, and then we also have double quoted strings inside of there. An even easier way of doing that is without using these escape characters, and you might have an idea of how to do that. We just exchange this for backticks, right? Because none of the strings contain backticks in literal syntax, so we can just use that backticks here to wrap them, and then we are allowed to use both the single and double quoted strings inside of them. This way, we can write the string however we want. It is quite handy, right? Great. This video contained all the basics of strings and you learned it all. Strings are pretty simple. In the next videos, we're going to explore extended string functionalities like string properties and methods.